Hey everyone, it's Nicole Mitchell again, coming back at you. First, I want to say thank you so much for your incredible support and love to my last video. It was really scary to post that, and I just thank you for those of you who were incredibly gracious and kind and loving and supportive. It means a lot to me. And also to answer any questions or fears people might have after my last video, John and I are doing great. John is phenomenal. For everyone who knows him, you know he's like the most amazing human that walks on this planet. He constantly blows me away with his kindness and his graciousness, his thoughtfulness. He's one of the most forgiving, loving humans I have ever met. And it's an incredible privilege to be married to him, and can't imagine doing life without him. So please know we're doing great. He's phenomenal. And I'd say he's pretty lucky to be married to me too. All right, today what I want to share with you is how and when I realized I was first queer. Because I think stories are powerful, and I think my story might illuminate the path of other people who might be in a similar boat but aren't able to articulate their journey quite yet. So, I didn't realize I was queer until about a year and a half ago. And when I realized that, so much of my life made sense. So much of my life. And so I'm going to share parts of my life that made sense once I realized my identity. So I remember being in grade school, and I was really into a girl for a couple of years. I didn't have anything to compare that to. I didn't have a language for that. That wasn't something that was discussed in the communities I grew up in. So that was just that. And then I remember in 7th or 8th grade when Hanson, the boy band, came out. Any Hanson fans out there? I was obsessed with them. Maybe I still like them a little bit. And when they came out, I thought they were sisters, and I was in love with them. In love with them. And then I learned that they were brothers. Didn't change a thing about it for me. I loved them still. I was in love with them if they were sisters or if they were brothers. Like, that gender had no influence on me. I was obsessed with them. And not just like I was obsessed, like great music. I was very attracted to them. Then I remember in high school, some of my biggest crushes were on my queer friends. And I remember in 9th grade hating myself that I was straight because I wanted to date my queer friends so badly. And later I thought, I don't think straight people think like that. I don't think they hated their straightness and wish they could be queer. I don't know. And then in college, I had a brief stint where I was attracted to a girlfriend of mine. And so all these things came flashing back or flooding back when I realized I was queer, and it made so much sense. And then later, so then I would hear different words. I remember watching a show on Netflix, and one of the characters said, I'm attracted to people, not genders. And that really resonated with me. I remember I took an online course, and we were introducing ourselves, and one student said, because we shared our orientation, and she shared that she falls in love with all kinds of beautiful people. And that really resonated with me. And then the more I got involved with the LGBTQ community, the more I became aware of this magnetic attraction I had towards LGBTQ people. And it was more than like, oh, let's be good friends, you're a nice human. It was like very real attraction, like how I have felt towards John. And I remember thinking, that's weird because I'm straight. And then finally, like, the coin went in the slot, and it was just like an epiphany, and everything made so much sense. And it feels really good when things line up and make sense. When there's something about you, but you're not able to articulate, and you can finally articulate, it feels so good. So it's like, oh my word, this is huge. And then I bawled because I wasn't afraid to tell John. John is the safest human being in my life. I had no fear telling him. I had fear because my church at that time was not affirming, and I was very involved in the church. And I knew for sure that now my orientation would be a barrier from me being allowed to grow in my role at my church. And then I got scared of what my family and friends would think of me, even though I'm the same person. But this is like a big hang up for people, for some people. And that made me really sad and a little scared. And then all these comments, because I had been an ally for the LGBTQ community for a long time. And now all those comments, those harmful, hurtful comments that people have said about my LGBTQ friends and family became personal. Now I realize that they were saying those things about people like me. That really, really hurt. I felt super judged and misunderstood and given very conditional love. So that was hard, having all those things kind of hit you at once. And I don't remember how long I waited before I told John. Probably not long. I can't keep a secret from John to save my life. He can read my face. My emotions are on my sleeve. Like, I can't lie. And he does remember we were in the kitchen, though, when I came out to him. And I just told him, like, I think something like, hey, can I tell you something interesting about myself? And told him, like, I'm queer. I'm not sure quite yet. That time I wasn't using pansexual. That term was not in my vocabulary yet, but queer was. And when I told John, his first words, I think that's amazing, babe. That's awesome. I think it's completely normal, and I love you. Cue all the tears. Like, that's so who John is. And I remember that night he sat on the couch, and I don't know if he was reading or something. I came on the couch and I laid my head on his lap, and I just sobbed, afraid of what this meant for my future, because it was going to change everything. It was going to change the church I was attending. It was going to change my relationships with my friends and family. My whole future changed because the seminary I was thinking about going to was not affirming. I knew I could no longer go to that seminary. It just, everything shifted in that moment. And I just wept on John's lap. And then when I finished, he just said, "Did you have a good cry?" And I was like, yes. And so over the year and a half, he's been incredibly supportive and loved me through all of it. And I'm a very big verbal processor. And so he's heard me process this a million times over when I would learn new things or whatever, and just incredibly supportive. And it wasn't until a whole year later that he told me, when I first came out to him, he thought, was afraid that was me telling him, that was the beginning of me telling him that we were going to separate, that I was going to leave him. And I was blown away by that at first. Well, I think that he thought that, but it makes sense why he could be afraid of that. But that he wouldn't tell me that, like, for a year. I mean, that just shows who John is. He is so rooted, like he's so secure in himself that he's able to give me the space I needed to figure things out and not pressure me, which is huge, because I don't know I could say I could do that for him. If he came out to me as LGBTQ, somewhere on that spectrum, or say he came out to be gay, and I was afraid that might mean we separate, I would probably slightly freak out, because John is my everything. I love him to pieces, and I really can't imagine doing life without him. And I don't know if I could wait a whole year before telling him my fears, but John did, and that made me love him a million times more, that he wanted me to figure things out and that he would support me no matter what. Like, what on earth? How is he such a phenomenal human? So, so he was incredibly supportive. I have to look at my notes because I had to write some things down because I didn't want to forget anything. And so I guess over the past, it was several months, I kept this private between me and him as I tried to figure things out. And then I slowly came out to just a few key people because I had to be very careful because I was still very involved in my church and I was still trying to figure out how to handle that situation. And then here I am today. I feel very called and very passionate about working in this area and kind of the intersection of faith and the LGBTQ community and what that means for us. And I also believe there's power in telling our stories. And I realized at one point I was living in fear. And that's when I knew I had to say something, because living in fear is not living at all. And so basically, I don't know if like there's a takeaway really, except this is my story. And if you are like me and you're finding yourself on a journey where things aren't making sense because you haven't been given a vocabulary, maybe this will help. And maybe you'll find some encouragement and hope in it. And if you find yourself in a heteronormative marriage like me, and you realize several years into it that you're not straight like me, please know that you're not alone. There are a lot of couples who've walked this road before us, and we will figure it out together. And I respect whatever decision each couple comes to. But yeah, after I came out last week, you guys, I got so many messages from people who are in a heteronormative marriage, but they're not straight. It was mind blowing. But yeah, at Knox, I know there's so many of us. So just take encouragement in that you're not alone, I'm not alone, we're not alone, and we're all figuring this out. And we have some really amazing things to offer as individuals and as a couple and as a family. And I guess to my straight friends, I would ask that and this is a word for me too. I have to do this too. Like we assume so much about other people, and I would just say that we have to be careful to not assume the orientation of other people, even if they look like they're in a straight marriage, because there's a lot of us who appear to be straight, but we're not. And so I would say my challenge or my ask is that you would be the kind of person, the kind of friend where a friend of yours would feel safe to come out to you. That's my desire for straight people out there, is be the kind of person where it'd be safe for someone to tell you their story. All right, this is getting long, so I'm gonna let you go. Love you guys so much. Thank you for your support, and I'll be posting another video in the next week or so to answer some of the big questions. All right, bye guys.